Good Friday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope your weekend is off to a good start. Browns still in West Virginia. First day in pads, getting ready for that Hall of Fame game, which will be next Thursday. So less than a week away at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio against the Jets. Mentioned Browns in pads for the first time today. Deshaun Watson getting in some footwork drills, stepping over, getting the throw off. Here, Watson on the run, scrambling, and he finds Cedric Tillman with the little comeback on the sidelines. Good job of getting the feet inbounds. Here's a nice one, a little quick screen to Donovan Peoples-Jones. Elijah Moore out blocking. Okenrankwo working on some individual drills, and here's a really good sign. Amari Cooper back on the field running a drill. They are ramping him back up. It was his first day in pads. Some other news. Kevin Stefanski said Jacob Phillips, who left early, is fine. Mike Harley Jr., wide receiver, being looked at for a possible head injury. Stefanski also talked about the first padded practices today as well as tomorrow and what we'll see.
With the pads going on, what we're going to do today is really focus on technique. As you know, Tony, sometimes the pads go on and technique goes out the window, so we're going to spend a ton of time in individual today, and really tomorrow we'll have what will look like a, offense versus defense padded practice more so tomorrow. Today's a shorter workout in time, but heavy emphasis on individual and high intensity.
And with that, let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily. So, Casey, pads on. We're taking steps towards getting to football. They have a couple more practices in West Virginia. They'll come back to Berea for a practice. Less than a week is that Hall of Fame game against the Jets.
Yeah, well, baby steps, baby steps. Tomorrow it sounds like they're going to get after it a little bit. So, keep your eyes peeled for whatever clips pop out of that. But, it's the process, and you hear the players talk about it, like Thornhill, who's been in Kansas City. He's actually liking this approach. He feels it's going to benefit them in the long run because they're not just going to beat their bodies up from the jump. They're kind of getting that slow jog up to a sprint, and that's what you've seen this week.
So you mentioned Juan Thornhill. We've heard reports that in red zone drills particularly, defenses had the better of it so far. Thornhill talked about that, and also just what that means during camp.
We always take pride in that. Like, one thing you do is eliminate points. When they get down there in a red zone, if you can get a third down stop and make them kick a field goal, you just save 4 points. So you got to take pride in that and try to win each and every down.
Do the players and the coaches think that those red zone periods are the most relevant during training camp?
Oh, yeah, definitely. We all take pride in it. Like, we even have it up on our board. Like, we have, like, a certain percentage that we're trying to, win each and every day. Like, we don't want to give up like a red zone touchdown because it's like on you. Like, you know what I'm saying? Everyone's going to see it, and that allows the offense to get points. So what we're going to do is just try to keep you out the end zone.
What's the percentage? Is it less than 50%?
We want to say at least a little less than 50%. 48, 49, we're happy with it.
And again, Casey, it's a factor of a number of things. It's timing. It's a lot of things that give the defense an advantage. But it's never a bad thing to have your defense doing well in the red zone, be it practice or whatever.
No, and it's the competition. I think, it's not just the X's and O's, it's the Jimmies and Joes, and there's dudes on both sides of the ball. And I think there's going to be days where the offense walks away the victor. And I think that competition is only going to serve them well when they get into the actual bullets come September. And I think it's good every now and again to walk off the field with that little feeling in your stomach like, oh, they got us today, because that's what brings you back tomorrow to go get them, and it's not a bad thing. It's just iron sharpening iron.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you hear the offensive players and the defense, you already sense there's a little bit of a healthy competition going on.
Yeah, and that's what you need to get better, and there's dudes on both sides of the ball, and I know we've seen clips of Elijah Moore getting them yesterday, and it's going to be tit for tat, and they're going to keep going at it, and the Browns will only benefit in the end.
So this is from Warren Sharp. He tweets this out: best secondaries in 2023. He's got the Jets 1, the Cowboys 2, the Bills 3, Broncos, Saints, Eagles, Seahawks up to. He's got the Browns secondary down at 17. Wow, I think that's low. I don't know. I don't know any other way to say it other than wow, that's really low. I mean, if you look at the corners, I think they're really good. I think Ward had a bad year last year, but I think it's a factor of asking guys to do things that they don't excel at. And I think Jim Schwartz can put an end to that.
What's crazy is I actually read the article that accompanied this, and they actually had the Browns third overall last year at the end of the year in secondary. And the reasoning to why they dropped to 17 is because Grant Delpit lost his running mate. So they're saying that the subtraction of John Johnson dropped them from third to 14. I can't get there. I would trade Juan Thornhill and Rodney McLeod for John Johnson 11 times out of 10. Like, I don't understand how you can be third, get better in the offseason, and drop 14 spots. To me, this is just lazy. Like, good luck finding 3 cover corners as good as the Browns on any one team in the entire league. And then you add the additions they made to the safety room, and somehow they got worse, according to Warren Sharp.
Well,
I just can't.
You know, Grant Delpit lost his running mate late in a few games that cost him wins last year as well.
Yeah. I would say they lost John Johnson well before the end of the season.
All right. So a lot has been made about Deshaun Watson. Will he come back? Won't he come back? Tony Gurzi has been a long-time Browns beat reporter, along with Mary Kay Cabot. One of the guys I really respect. Here is what he has seen from Watson.
It is blatantly obvious that he is better than anyone they've had in 20-plus years. I mean, what happens in the game,
yeah, we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah,
but
see.
Listen, I wouldn't hype that if it weren't the case. I wouldn't hype that. I would say he looks like any other Browns quarterback if that were the case. That's not the case.
Yeah.
Now, I'm being a little hard on the red zone thing because that's the problem with this offense. Get the ball in the end zone when you get that far down. So those are relevant exercises, but that's why I'm picking them apart right now. But I'm not blind to what they have here.
And Casey, he's been the beat reporter for a long, long time. So when he says that, there's some credibility to it. And not only that, he's never been a guy that's giving you what the team, that he's not the company line kind of guy.
Yeah, he's not going to spoon feed you what you want to hear just because you want to hear it. And he's right. The talent level is not comparable. They have not had a player of this skill at that position ever. And I mean, that's the history of the franchise. There's not been a quarterback with the level of skill that Deshaun Watson has. And it's all about putting it together and gelling with your teammates and getting it to be efficient on the field. But everything's there. Grossi's right. Like, you'd have to lie to yourself to say that he's not the most talented quarterback that they've ever had.
And he's also right. They got to fix the Reds. That was a problem last year as well. It's probably a little bit different when you can spread out a defense with what they have and use Nick Chubb. But you got to score touchdowns in the red zone. So that's one of the reasons he's been harping on that.
Yeah, and you got to be able to do it in a variety of ways. There's going to be times where you need to be the hammer and line up, and they know you're running it, and you know you're running it. Everyone in the stadium knows, and you still have to get that 1 yard, But now they do have the capabilities to spread you out and use players like Elijah Moore to kind of dictate things and use him in motion and bunch formations and just do different things. They also have a much higher skill group in the tight ends now, adding Akins, that give you more size in the red zone. So they have different packages they can use. It's all about working out the kinks during training camp.
All right, so this is from Touchdown Wire. Division stat leader predictions. They predict that Myles Garrett will lead the NFL in sacks. Pairing him with newly acquired free agent Zadarius Smith will make it difficult for teams to dedicate too much attention his way. Perhaps a 20-sack season is in his future. Yeah, I mean, you don't forget Okenronquo, and you also have Tomlinson, and 20 sacks, that's a lot, but look at what he had with nobody around him.
Yeah, I said that exact stat 2 weeks ago on this show. He could have 20. He really could. I mean, I know it sounds preposterous, but we're to the point now with the personnel they brought in, with Jim Schwartz dialing everything up. It would almost feel like a letdown if Myles only had 16 sacks. Think of how insane that sentence is, that 16 sacks could somehow be a letdown. But I think that's the point we're at right now. Myles is coming into his physical prime. He's 27 years old. Like, it's now or never, the way I look at it.
And he is, he's building a resume that ends with a gold jacket and him, being celebrated, as one of the best. But again, he's kind of going up the steps. He's reached the stairway. Now he's just got to get up the steps to get in that hall.
Yeah, for me, it's can you avoid the weirdness? Because he's had some weird stuff happen these last 4 years. He just avoids that weirdness. He might have hit 20 these last couple years, And then if you add in what they've paired him with, and with Za'Darius opposite and Ogbo and Tomlinson, this is a perfect storm for Miles to get Defensive Player of the Year. And all that is for naught if the defense isn't good. It'll be good for his stats and his accolades, but it has to result in this defense being good. And I think that's the point we're finally at.
Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out of the break. We'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hello, here I am Hugo calling from Brazil. So I'm really pumped for this season for the Browns, but I have still some concerns. I think our defense will be much improved by Jim Schwartz, but I still have some concerns regarding the short yardages plays, like the slant and the flat, and even the running, because I think the defensive tackle still is not as strong as maybe should be. So what do you think that is going to happen when we have teams pounding, running, and doing those short yardages plays?
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Casey, that's the reason that they got Tomlinson and Ika. But more than anything, the adjustments that Jim Schwartz makes, don't underestimate his ability to diagnose what a team's doing and stop it. That's what good defensive coordinators do.
Concerns is the caller just from the shell shock of what we've seen in years past. But I think where this team is at now is they got the guys in camp. They're letting this play out. They're not going to panic and sign someone for no reason. The guys that are on the market, like Matt Ioannidis, Shelby Harris, Sue Hicks, those guys are still going to be there. There's no reason to run and go get them now. And besides, I don't think Hicks or Sue are itching to get into a training camp. But they have the perfect opportunity because here in a little over 2 weeks, they're going to go to Philadelphia. They're going to get to go one-on-one with probably the best offensive line in the league. They're going to find out whether they have what it takes up front or not. And if they walk away from those joint practices and there's a question defensive tackle, that's the time to go out and get a guy. The time's not now. Let it play out. Let Schwartz work with these guys. Let him see what they can develop. Let him see what kind of rotations they can come up with. And and in the end, if these guys aren't good enough, they will find someone who is. But there's always the chance that even the guy they go and get isn't the answer. You got to let it play out though. And panicking right now just because they don't have another superstar at the other defensive tackle isn't the way to go.
And again, they'll disguise the fronts, and they'll do. Jim Schwartz does a lot of different things up front, but I get it. They need better production from defensive tackle position. Kevin Stefanski talked just about getting a better idea of where this team is after the padded practices.
That's a big piece of it. As you guys know, think about the spring. Really, the rules are written that you can only do 7-on-7 in the spring, competitively, right? So you learn a lot about your pass game, but then having said that, the DBs can't put their hands on a receiver. So as you progress into camp, you can make a fair assessment of our players and our corners in press and how guys get off of blocks and those type of things prior to the pads going on.
And again, Casey, it's going to be an evolution. You can't even really tell that much from the preseason games because the starting guys aren't going to play that much. That's why those joint practices have become, big things.
Yeah, it's the controlled environment, and getting one-on-one action. And I think that's the valuable thing of these joint practices. And I think that's what you're going to see going forwards. Every year you're going to try to schedule hopefully someone that can give you challenges in areas that you need to be challenged in. And at the core of everything, football is a physical sport. So you're really not going to find out what you have until you put the pads on and people are actually going full. And it's risky. You're seeing a lot of people getting injured in these training camps, and it's always a worry. But at the end of the day, when it comes September 10th, you have to be able to go 100%. You can't just do that on September 10th. You have to have little pockets where you can kind of get your guys ready for that kind of action. And the only way to do it is with pads on, So they're going to find out a lot about themselves over these next couple of days.
So Dalvin Tomlinson talked today about Zadarius Smith, who he played with in Minnesota, and what he brings.
Z, that's my guy. His energy he brings to practice every single day is amazing. And like you said, he helps the young guys with technique and things he's learned over the years on different teams, and he shares his knowledge and like we all do. And it's just great how he's still willing to learn and still a student of the game. He's super motivational, but he's gonna give you some energy, give you some juice when you feel like you're a little tired or something. He's gonna come jump around and joke around with you to get you going a little bit more. And he's one of those guys who learns your reason why you playing this, and he just reminds you, hey, you're doing this for this. When you going play 12 in a drive or something like that, keep pushing DT, stuff like that.
And Casey, we've made a big deal about the guys they've brought in, and they are talented, but guys like Zadarius Smith and Juan Thornhill, they're the kind of guys that give the defense a little bit of attitude that you need.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk over these last couple of weeks about leadership. I think both those guys that you just mentioned, Thornhill and Zadarius, are going to be your vocal leaders. Every time you see Zadarius, that's what pops off is what Dalvin was talking about, that energy that he brings, and it breeds competition because he's actually going at Miles when they're doing drills together. He's pushing him, and Miles really hasn't had that, ever. No one's been right there to kind of vocally get after him and push him. Well, Zadarius will do that, and that breeds everything that goes on down to the younger players, and they see that, and it's infectious, and a locker room's an amalgamation of a lot of personalities, and you need those outward guys. And this team has a lot of really good players, but they're mostly inward reserve people. To add a couple guys to the mix that are a little more boisterous, I think it adds up to a winning combination in the end.
All right, before I let you go, take a look. This is a tweet from Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report. 2022, 88 edge rushers with 250 or more pass rushing snaps. Here they are ranked by pressure rate. Zadarius Smith was 9th with 15.2%. Myles Garrett 10th, 14.9%. And Okunrankwo 22nd at 13.4. That is a massive upgrade from a season ago.
That is a good place to be. And if you're Jim Schwartz, you got to be licking your chops of what you have at your disposal. And just seeing those kind of pressure rates, I have a hard time imagining if this team stays healthy, and those three individuals in particular, if this team doesn't set their own single season sack record. I think 55 sacks as a defense should be completely on the table. It's not unrealistic. We saw the Eagles get 70 last year. So it's not even like they'd be pushing some sort of NFL threshold. But just between those three players, they could realistically get 40 sacks, and the biggest thing you can do as a defense period is affect the passer, and they have the pieces in place. They should be able to do just that, and someone like Ogbo, like, he's not a one-trick pony. That he can set the edge, he can do the other things, but he does get after the quarterback. And when you have another guy to add to the mix, when you already have a Zadarius and a Myles Garrett, like, if you're Jim Schwartz, man, that is a lot to have in your stable, and you've seen what he's been able to do in the past with the other pass rushers he's had. I don't think he's had guys like this in his career.
Yeah, and I think he's looking forward to this season and kind of unleashing them on the opposition. Casey Kinnamon, is always great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Hey, anytime. You guys have a great weekend.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out. Dog Pound Daily, always really good stuff. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Lance Reisland joins us. Film breakdown, video analysis. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey guys, really enjoy all aspects of the show. Hey, could Lance Reisland possibly put together some video on Deshaun Watson throwing the deep ball in his career? Throws with some air under them. We haven't had a quarterback who could throw deep with consistent accuracy that I can remember. Hopefully our competitors watch these videos as well to give them more to have to game plan for. Let's go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Lance Reisland, who does our film analysis video breakdown as well. So Lance, requests now from the viewers. They want to see some Watson deep balls. And you can say whatever you want about Deshaun Watson. We have not seen a guy with this kind of arm talent play quarterback for the Browns. I mean, Bernie Kosar was a really good quarterback. He was more of the mental kind of guy, and he did have his arm was okay. Brian Sipe was not a strong arm guy. This is really the first guy in a long time that has the arm talent to throw deep regularly.
When we watch him on film, he can make all the throws. So he can make throws from the pocket, outside the pocket. Like all NFL guys, most NFL quarterbacks have really, really good arm talent. Some are better than others. Deshaun Watson, obviously, he's in the top, upper echelon of that arm talent. But like Bernie Kosar, what gives him the advantage in the deep ball is he knows where he's going. So he's able to process the information, process the coverage that he sees, and then he can use that arm talent. And I've always said arm talent has a lot to do with your ability to process what the defense is giving you. And Deshaun Watson, like Bernie Kosar, like these elite guys, they're able to process that information and then use that incredible arm. He does have an incredible arm. He can make all the throws, the different angles, etc. The deep ball, especially back in 220, he was really, really good. When he had Fuller, they threw the ball a ton. He was in shotgun even more than he'll be now, but he really threw the ball deep in 220. I think the Browns will get back to that this year.
All right, let's take a look at a couple of clips of him throwing the deep ball. This one from his time at the Texans. Tell us what you see.
All right, so as the play goes through here, you're going to see a couple things. One is he's going to process. So with the linebackers not being in the middle of the field over top of the ball, it kind of tells him man coverage along with what the corners are doing. So the corners are kind of matched up. What we always like to say is if the eyes are on the receivers, it's man coverage. If the eyes are back at the quarterback, it's zone coverage. So
He sees man coverage here. The only guy he's got an influence is that free safety, who you can see coming over late. And what he does on the drop is that he's going to put his head right in the middle of the field. This is what he does really well. So he recognizes man coverage. He's able to keep that free safety in between the hashers with his head, and then he throws a great ball. And again, his deep ball is effortless. He doesn't have to really torque his body. That's the arm talent, his ability to spin the ball, puts it where only the receiver can get it. But again, this comes down to his ability to understand man coverage and deliver a great ball.
And when you think about it, Lance, some of the struggles from a year ago were because it was a new offensive system and a new set of teammates. So that ability to process, it was kind of thrown out of whack just because it's not the system that he was familiar with. That's one of the reasons I think he's likely to have a pretty good jump pretty significantly early in the year even.
Well, yeah, then the reps. So, I've always been a believer in reps. So he's going to get more and more reps with all these receivers throughout training camp. Now he does not have to worry about sitting any games. So not only is he understanding the scheme, I think being underneath center was huge for him last year. He was underneath center a lot more than he was in 220. 220, he was in over 80%. He was in the gun with the Texans. So he had to learn that footwork a little bit. Again, game speed. All that stuff ties into it and stuff that he doesn't have to worry about this year. On the field, he's going to be mentally ready to go, physically ready to go. So I agree. I expect a big jump.
So let's take a look. This is from last year, one of the throws that Watson made on a deep ball. Take us through what you see here and some of the reasons you like this.
Well, if you look at this, it's going to be so the play runs a couple times here. This is a really good, again, recognition of what he sees. So at the top of the screen, you're going to see Hunt is going to be at the top of the screen or 1 strong. Njoku is going to be at 2 strong or second in from the top. Cooper is going to be at 3 strong. Obviously have the strength with 3 receivers at the bottom. You're going to have Bryant at 2 strong, and you got DPJ at 2 weak, and then DPJ at 1 week at the bottom of the screen. So what the Commanders do here really, really well is that Kane, who lined up over Njoku, and Fuller is going to line up behind him, and they're going to show a cover 3. And if it's cover 3, this will not be the throw he makes because that corner will be there. So what he sees is he sees the corner over to the top of Njoku go to the top. And when he goes to the top, Fuller will drop to the half. So they're going to drop to a cover 2. The thing that makes this really, really impressive is where he puts the football. So not only does he recognize that now they're moving to cover 2, but he puts it on the outside shoulder of Njoku away from Fuller. So this is all of the above. This is incredible recognition. This is great footwork. This is great arm angle. This is great processing. And this is a good 20, 25, 30-yard throw to the outside shoulder of Njoku. So for me, this is his best throw of last season with the ability to process, the arm talent, and understanding what the Commanders gave him.
The other thing that's apparent with that throw, Lance, that's opposite. That's far hash to sideline. That is not a throw a whole lot of NFL quarterbacks can make. I mean, that really, you need to have a very strong arm to be able to throw that across the field like that with the athletes that you have in the defensive backfield of an NFL secondary.
Yeah, and not knowing where he's going pre-snap. So pre-snap, he may be sinking cover 3 here, so he's going to go somewhere, at the bottom of the screen. If it's cover 3, he'll probably work a high-low with Bryant and DPJ here at the bottom of the screen. But by rolling to cover 2, he understands that hole between the corner and the safety, which makes the throw even better because he has to anticipate, and he's not really thinking, where I'm going to throw it early. He has to wait, read the coverage, and then deliver a ball. And again, effortless hip rotation, really, really good fundamentals, delivers the ball with easy power.
Lance Reisland, when you look at the arm talent and how good, I mean, there's some guys that have really, Justin Herbert, who just signed the huge contract, comes to mind. Mahomes has ridiculous arm talent. Who are some of the guys? I mean, he slots up there near the strongest arms in the NFL, doesn't he?
Yeah, you just named Josh Allen. You talk about Mahomes. You talk about these guys that can really spin it. But what really makes their arm talent elite, again, and I say it over and over, is they understand where to go with the football. And when you understand where to go with the football, it makes the throws a lot easier. So not only does he have the arm talent, but a great ability, if you look at a great comparison, would be Bernie Kosar. Bernie Kosar didn't have great elite skills, but he understood where to go with the football. So if you understand where to go with the football, you don't need to have as much arm talent. Now, if you understand what the coverage is and what people are trying to do to you, and you have elite talent and elite arm talent, now you're talking about those upper echelon guys, the Brett Favres, the guys that can flat out just spin the ball A to B. There's not a lot they can make. They can put a little arc if needed, but they can deliver the ball in a small spot with tremendous accuracy.
Lance Reisland, is always great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Lance and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we take a look at what Jim Schwartz's defense will match up like with the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. We've been doing this with all of the AFC North opponents. Steelers offense, Browns defense with Jim Schwartz. Straight ahead on Sports for CLE. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. We continue what we've been doing the last several weeks, looking at how the Browns' new defense under Jim Schwartz, the revamped defense, will match up against AFC North opponents. Time to take a look at the Steelers. And when you say Steelers offense, what comes to mind, Lance?
Well, what you're going to get, I think they're going to go back to a little bit more of what has made them successful over the past couple decades. I think they're going to go back to run the ball a little bit with Najee Harris. Their draft, they took Darnell Washington, the big tight end. They took Broderick Jones, big tackle out of Georgia. And then they, through free agency, I thought they got a guy who's really underrated in Isaac Seumalo. A really good guard, really physical, really, really good against the run. So I think with Najee Harris, I think they're going to take the pressure off Pickett a little bit. They do have some good receivers, Pickens. Those guys are pretty good, but I think they're going to try to run the football, and I think they're going to try to play good defense themselves.
So one of the concerns a season ago, obviously, was communication issues. Let's take a look at this first clip, what you see and what your thoughts are here.
Well, they made it really easy to Pickett here. So they're going to show a 4-cross or two high safety look, and then one of the safeties comes down. And they had a number of communications issues last year, and this won't be the case this year. They're going to be in more of a one-eye hat man coverage, and even if they're in a zone coverage, it's a very simple cover 3, pattern match cover 3 that's very, very simple. It's very, very easy to relate to each other. So, again, not only did they have some miscommunication last year, but often they didn't know who was wrong and who should be doing what. So I think they're going to simplify. You don't want to give a young quarterback, an unproven quarterback, easy throws like this. And this is just an easy scheme route, because one safety comes up, the other safety's on the hash. I don't think you're going to see that this year with the new defense. One safety's going to be in the middle, everybody's going to be in man coverage, or those linebackers are going to be bumping those slot receivers if it is zone. So I look for much better communication in the secondary.
Let me ask you this. As a defensive coach, when you simplify the defense and you're willing to play the simple base defense, are you basically saying my guys are good enough to go out and make the plays they need to make? What's kind of the mindset when you're doing something like that?
Well, there's two ways to look at it. One is that you don't have elite talent and you're allowing the guys to play fast and simple, which is going to give them the best opportunity if they're not as good as the other team. But with the Browns, they have elite talent. So now what you're doing is you're getting into, can you be a top 5, top 10 defense? Because not only is the scheme simple, but now they get to play extremely fast and they're high-level guys. So I think what it does is it makes those guys, they know who they have, they know what their role is, and I think they'll be very fast. And what a simple defense does for me is it allows your guys to play fast. I don't care what level it is. The faster you play, the better chance you have playing good defense.
So, obvious concern, and we've touched on a little bit, when you talk about the Steelers, you talk about a guy that runs the ball and runs the ball in a physical nature, and that's Najee Harris. As we take a look at this second clip, what do you see?
Well, you're going to see two things are apparent here. One is that the defensive tackles really struggled, and again, if you look at those guys inside, they don't get any movement upfield. You're not going to see that this year. Those guys are going to be more in a gap. This is kind of how they played it last year. So they were two gap and getting their hands on the guy in front of them. And this year they're going to be more in a gap, penetrating, getting upfield. By penetrating, you're going to take away some of those double teams and some of that movement. And then it's going to allow that secondary guys. Another thing is you're going to see up top, they're not real sound in that deep gap. So I think with Schwartz being simple allows you to have your rules. So I think they're going to be a little bit more sound, have a little bit more gap integrity against the run. And then again, being simple, I think that one of the things they need to do besides scheme is they need to play with a little bit of attitude. They need to have a little bit of edge. If you think about the Baltimore Ravens, if you think about the 217 Eagles, not only was the scheme simple, but there was an attitude and an edge those guys played with, something the Browns have not shown, and something I think with Schwartz, they have the personnel to play like that. So I look for them to not only be more sound, but be more physical and a little bit nastier than they've been in the past.
And we've talked before when we've looked at Jim Schwartz defenses, that's kind of a calling card of them. They do have an edge. They do have a nastiness. That's something that that's a trademark of his defenses, for lack of a better term.
Well, yeah, and you can be nasty if you know what you're doing. And once again, if you know what you're doing, you can play fast. If you know what you're doing, you're not thinking. I've always been a believer. I've said it before. If you're thinking, you're not moving. So not only do you get to play nasty, but you get to understand what you're doing. And by understanding what you're doing, everything else becomes easy. You get to play fast, you understand your rules, and you fly the football.
So the other thing that comes to mind when you think about the Pittsburgh Steelers, a quarterback who is in his second year. You have Kenny Pickett. Let's take a look at this third clip. What do you see here?
Well, they do have Pickens. They do have Deontay Johnson. So they have some good receivers. But what you're going to see here is that you're going to see that the Jets are going to show a five-man pressure, but they're going to drop off. They're just going to rush forward. And again, they show a man coverage, but they're actually going to drop back into a cover three type of situation where there's going to be a 1-3 safety look, but guys underneath in zone coverage. And if you see by him, I think it looks like, as a quarterback, it looks like he is reading man coverage and then gets strict in the zone. And you can see his feet are very, very active. They actually have good protection. So for me, that tells me he's not really sure what he's seeing. When you're unsure of what you're seeing, again, takes away from any arm talent, takes away from anything else, because your feet aren't set and you throw with all arm. This is what happens here. So the Jets do a really good job of showing one coverage or showing one look and giving him another. So I think with Schwartz, they won't be in all man coverage. I think you're going to see man coverage against a lot more man coverage against the top high-end quarterbacks, because it gives their DBs a chance. With the Steelers, I see them playing some zone along with man to make Kenny Pickett beat them. So not only will they crowd the line of scrimmage in man, but they'll drop out and play a little zone at times to make him go through his progressions, beat him. Because in man coverage, at least you know where you're going with the ball. In zone, you got to go through progression. So I think that they're going to play a little bit of zone against the Steelers as well, make Pickett go through all his process.
The other thing is you mentioned they showed 5, they dropped 1 off. Jim Schwartz's defense, as we've talked about before on this show, they do that a lot. They'll show 5, 6, and bring 4. You never know which guys are coming and which guys are dropping with Jim Schwartz's defenses.
Well, and I think ultimately as a defensive guy, you want to get as much pressure as you can with minimal amount of guys. The minimal amount of guys you can bring, the more obviously you can have coverage. So if they can bring 4, they can get 7 in coverage at all times. They can be in man coverage, have some guys that can do some different things with coverage. I think what he expects is that I think even though he's going to bring 5, usually when teams bring 4 over 4 or 5 guys, is because their 4 guys they have can't get home. With the Browns, with the Myles Garrett, Obo, and Smith and these guys, they expect these guys to be able to win their one-on-one battles and get pressure with 4. So I see them doing a lot where they're going to bring 5 occasionally, but I see them bringing 4, showing 5 and 6, but bringing 4 a lot, allowing those guys to get home and then, helping out with coverage in the secondary.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff. Cleveland.com, as well as the Plain Dealer with the film breakdown and video analysis. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Randy Gurzi on the other side of the break. We continue talking Browns here on Sports for CLA. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports for CLE. Kirk Morrison on how Deshaun Watson stacks up against the rest of the quarterbacks in the AFC North. This is from the Rich Eisen Show.
Joe Burrow ranks number 1 in that division, but then where's Deshaun Watson at? Is this another one of – I feel like Deshaun Watson and Lamar Jackson are very much even in this conversation because they both have a lot to prove. If Deshaun Watson is, like Mary Kay Cabot just said a little bit earlier, if Deshaun Watson is who we thought he was from a couple years ago, are we just saying, oh, yeah? Because people were saying Deshaun Watson was a top 3, top 4 in the National Football League just a couple years ago. He's got to prove that again. Lamar Jackson's got to prove that again.
With that, let's welcome in Randy Gurzi from Dog Pound Daily. Randy, I think that's a fair assessment of both Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson.
100%. I think, we've seen both of them do it at an elite level. Obviously, Lamar Jackson won an NFL MVP award, but he's not wrong that Deshaun Watson was right there not too long ago. Him and Patrick Mahomes were kind of both signing big contracts right around the same time, look like the future faces of the NFL. So we know that Watson can do it. He can put up the big numbers. Same with Lamar Jackson, but Jackson's coming off injuries. Deshaun Watson had the huge layoff, so we need to see them do it. But I don't think that he's far off at all saying that they're both neck and neck fighting for that number 2 spot in the division.
Yeah, and the other thing is keep in mind Lamar Jackson, a new offensive coordinator. We'll see how that plays out. He mentioned Joe Burrow as the top, and yesterday we showed you he had to leave practice. So an update, this from Adam Schefter. Zach Taylor told reporters he expects Joe Burrow to be sidelined several weeks due to his calf injury. It is a calf strain. So the good news is, it was a non-contact injury. The good news is he will be back. Taylor wouldn't elaborate any more on several weeks. That puts him right near that first game with the Browns. So first of all, as a football fan, you're happy that Joe Burrow is going to play this year. Don't get crazy with any of that. I'm not sure you want to be hobbled against what this Browns defensive line is going to look like in the way they're going to play.
No, in the NFL season, I've said it before, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So I think that the Bengals are going to try to be smart about this and not put him out there unless he's at 100%. I know there's going to be some Browns fans that kind of hope he misses the game. I'm one of those that I want to beat the opponent at 100%. So I was hoping, I was glad that everything was okay. But yeah, it's up in the air right now. I'm seeing people talk about the Browns have suddenly become the betting favorite for Week 1. So I think the expectation is that Burrow is, may not be there come Week 1, which would obviously give the Browns a huge advantage.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Eventually, if you're going to be a really good team, you're going to have to beat the Bengals with Joe Burrow. So, go ahead and do that.
Right.
This is one stat to know for all 32 teams ahead of the 2023 season from Pro Football Focus. And this one's a good one. Nick Chubb is the first running back in PFF history to post an 80-plus grade in rushing grades in each of his first 5 seasons. Chubb also owns the highest total rushing grade, 94.3, and the most missed tackles forced, 331, by any back in their first 5 years. So that kind of quantifies just how good Nick Chubb has been. And he's been doing that when they're stacking people in because you can't spread them out. I am very anxious to see how Nick Chubb runs and how effective he can be once you put a passing threat around him.
Yeah, that is really kind of a surprising stat. Not surprising in the sense that Nick Chubb is that good, but just surprising that nobody else has really been able to do that. But it just does show how good he's been and how consistent he's been for 5 years. He's definitely one of the best in the NFL, and you're absolutely right. Stump Mitchell not too long ago was talking about that, the Browns running back coach, and saying how he really believes that even if Nick Chubb gets fewer carries this year, which they're going to, not going to try to run him into the ground, but he believes that even if Nick Chubb gets fewer carries, he can be still one of the top runners in the NFL, and he believes he can average around 6 yards per carry. For his career, he's right at 5 yards a carry, which is maybe a little bit above 5 yards, which is absolutely insane when you think about just how limited even when they have had a bit of a passing attack, it hasn't been a deep passing attack, so that the safeties and linebackers and stuff still haven't had to back off very much. So with more of a spread offense, I think Mitchell's right. I think you can see even more explosive plays from Nick Chubb and have him be even better than what we've seen.
Yeah, just think of what the challenges were the last 2 years. You had Baker Mayfield, who had the injured non-throwing arm. You had Jacoby Brissett, played well, but those aren't guys that you're going to say, man, we got to back up, and they didn't have the deep threat at receiving that they have now with potentially Goodwin and Elijah Moore.
Yeah, and then another thing that I just written about earlier, and I was talking about Jordan Akins. That's another area where I think we can actually see Nick Chubb even better is once you get into the red zone. They haven't had three just, kind of dominant or potentially dominant tight ends in the red zone. You have three guys now that can go up and catch the ball, and they're all really big. So you can come out there with a jumbo package and, still kind of have make defenses respect the pass. So I think that this entire offense, I think there's a little bit of a panic at first when you heard Kevin Stefanski talk about, using Nick Chubb less. But I think that it's, we're going to see we're all going to be happy with. I think he's going to be a whole lot more effective. And like I said, I think the best is still yet to come for him.
So Kevin Stefanski talked about what he has seen from one of the new guys on the defensive side of the ball, safety Juan Thornhill.
When you have safeties, you oftentimes hear them the quarterback of the defense, and there's so much communication that takes place from that position. So to have a guy like Juan, a Rodney McLeod, Grant as he gets into his third year, you have guys that are very vocal because they've played a lot of reps. And certainly Juan, with the amount of games that he's played and the big games that he's played, you certainly feel that. Players are keenly aware of guys that have Super Bowl rings, and Juan's had a ton of success. He's played at a high level over there in Kansas City, so that's instant credibility with your teammates. And then just to see how he works. He's a guy that fits in very well with our team and with our guys and with our mentality.
And the other guy that kind of you could say that about is Zadarius Smith. We talked about a little earlier in this show. I think those are two guys that will give this defense an identity and a little bit of an edge that maybe has been missing the last couple of years.
Yeah, and as much as I love the Zadarius Smith move, and I like them signing Okoronkwo, Dalvin Tomlinson, they're all great, but I felt like one of the most underrated moves, or two of the most underrated moves, were with players that Stefanski just mentioned, which was Juan Thornhill and Rodney McLeod. So much went wrong last year with the secondary having issues with communication. Ultimately, that's what led to John Johnson being released. And I think Thornhill really just brings what they needed in that back end. He's somebody that's capable of covering from sideline to sideline with the speed. They didn't have that center field type of safety, but then he's also got the experience. He's played against the best teams and the biggest of games. Rodney McLeod, same thing. He's been there plenty of years, and he's won Super Bowl as well. So I think that both of them are going to bring a whole lot more cohesiveness to the defense, which could be just as important as what Tomlinson, Smith, and Okoronkwo bring to the front lines.
So this one's from the Yard Barker. Sizzling AFC North training camp position battles for the Browns. They go defensive tackle. They mentioned Elliott versus Ika versus Maurice Hurst. Elliott only had 2.5 sacks in 3 seasons, has the nod for now. Ika and Hurst could make things interesting. Defense was 8th worst in rushing yards per game with 135 a season ago. That surprises me that they weren't even lower than that. Elliott's an intriguing guy. I'm anxious to see him with Jim Schwartz. And Hurst, if he stays healthy, he's been a productive NFL player when he's been healthy. The problem is he hasn't been healthy very much.
Yeah, and I don't even, think that whoever wins this starting battle is going to be that important. I think that you're going to see all of them out there. And as long as Hurst is healthy, you're going to see him out there on passing situations. You're going to see Ika out there in running situations. And Jordan Elliott's going to be able to kind of do a mix of things. I agree with you. I'd like to see what he can do with Jim Schwartz. There's obviously, when he came into the league, I was a fan of his. I liked what he brought to the table. He just really hasn't developed. And some of that could be on the coaching that he's had. Jim Schwartz has had plenty of success. So, I'd like to see what he can do with him. But in the end, I think we're going to see a lot of rotation. And I don't think that, the winner of this battle is necessarily going to be that big of a deal because they're all going to have their time out there.
Yeah, sharing the snaps, I think, is a good idea in the trenches without question. Randy Gurzi and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout, other side of the break. We'll hear from Juan Thornhill, plus the NFL all under 25 defensive team. We'll tell you if one of the Browns is on it. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Last segment, we talked a little bit about the addition of Juan Thornhill. It's the guy that's played in 3 Super Bowls with the Chiefs, won 2 of them. Thornhill on how that Super Bowl experience can help the Browns.
I mean, they ask about like what the Super Bowl is like. You can kind of like paint that picture for them so they can like start visualizing where we're trying to get to. I mean, it's just with me being able to play in multiple Super Bowl games, I also know what it takes to get there, like what type of work it's going to take to get there. And then I'm just here to push those guys and show them that like we have the players and the pieces to get to that big game.
How much have you seen the communication improve just in the time even going back to OTAs, just in the time you guys have been working together?
I mean, it's improved tremendously, honestly. Like guys when you first get out there in a new defense, like you're just trying to figure it out. Guys are really quiet, kind of timid, not knowing what to really say. It's not that the defense is hard. It's just, like that the verbiage and things like that can be a little different. But it's like day and night, honestly. Guys are communicating a lot louder. Guys are getting aligned much faster, and I just feel like we're playing fast.
And Randy, when you hear a defense playing fast, that is usually a defense that an offense does not want to deal with.
Yeah, I heard Lance Reisland talking before I came on about how if you're thinking you're playing slow. So I think that's kind of what you're talking about there. It's being able to know what you're doing, know what's expected of you, know where you need to be, and even more importantly is knowing where your teammates are going to be. Because I think we alluded to it a little bit earlier. The communication was such an issue last year. There were so many times I think that a defensive back is letting a guy get past him because they think the safety's supposed to be there, but then he's not there because he's thinking something differently. So these reps are incredibly valuable, and the communication is the absolute probably most important thing for a secondary. So it's great to see that, and it's great, as we mentioned earlier, to have a couple guys that have been there and won it all that are helping to kind of unify that group.
Yeah, there's a little bit of credibility when they say, yeah, we have the pieces here to do that.
Yeah, they know what they're talking about because they've seen it. Thornhill played for one of the best teams that we've seen recently with the Chiefs. And, their defense was never the reason they were winning at all, but their defense was never an issue. Their defense was always good. So he knows what it takes to play good defense. But he also went up against one of the best offenses in the NFL for years in practice. So I think he brings a lot of credibility. I really, I really appreciate how vocal he is, and he's kind of already taken on that leadership role, which is something that was really lacking last year on the defense. So it's been kind of a breath of fresh air to see him and the way that he's adapted to this team.
So this is from CBS Sports, the NFL All Under 25 defensive team for 2023. First team linebackers: Nick Bolton from Kansas City, Patrick Queen from Baltimore, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah from the Browns. Browns fans chomping at the bit for a JOK breakout season. He may finally have it in 2023 with defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz. He's an athletic specimen that can play different roles on defense. And those are the kind of guys that usually thrive in a Jim Schwartz system.
Yeah, he really is kind of like a Swiss Army knife. They can move him all over the place. Kind of did that at Notre Dame, where he was, kind of played halfway between a linebacker and safety. I really like him in the linebacker role in Cleveland, and I think he's been very good. You look at the numbers and see that he's put up some really good numbers, but he's done that without a good defensive line really in front of him. It's really only been Myles Garrett that's been occupying blockers, whereas the rest of the defensive line hasn't done that much of that. I think when you see the defensive line kind of commanding more respect from the offensive line, it's going to free JOK up even more to kind of use that athleticism and not have to go up against guys that are, 50 to 100 pounds heavier than him. So I definitely think that if he's going to have a breakout season, 2023 is going to be it.
All right, so let's take a look. 4 potential surprise cuts the Browns may make after training camp. This is from an article that Randy wrote for Dog Pound Daily. Number 4, Demetric Felton, running back. Number 3, Nick Harris, center. Number 2, Jacob Phillips, linebacker, and number 1, A.J. Green, cornerback. And, Green is a guy, whenever he's had the opportunity, he's played well. Take us through kind of your thought process with the article and who you think. Do you think any of these guys could potentially get traded? I mean, some of them probably have value for a late-round pick potentially if they're not going to be in the Browns' plans.
I would think Phillips and A.J. Green could definitely have some value to them. Felton, I think right now he's kind of got that running back 3 spot locked in, but you never know what might happen if another team releases somebody they like, a little bit more of a veteran player. Felton, I think it's kind of hurt him that his a lot of times versatility is a great thing, but I think it's hurt him a little bit that he kind of spent a little time at running back, spent more time at wide receivers, bouncing back to running back. So I think if somebody that's kind of played running back more than him gets cut, you might see the Browns make a move there. Nick Harris, I think, he's just unfortunate the injury kind of take him from being a starter to being on the bubble. Luke Whippler is younger. His contract is longer, so I think that, he's probably going to have the edge over Harris, and I don't know that you're going to keep 3 guys on the roster that are just pure centers. And then as far as Phillips has just really struggled to stay healthy. I think he's got the talent, but he's just had a hard time staying on the field. But him and A.J. Green, I think, could be in trouble for the same reason. They're just kind of further down the depth chart, but then they're going to have to try to beat out guys who are special teams aces. You got Matthew Adams at linebacker, who actually has experience with Bubba Ventrone. And so I think that he ends up making Jacob Phillips expendable. And the same thing for A.J. Green. The Browns have 3 really good corners with Ward, Newsome, and Martin Emerson. So A.J. Green's already looking at being kind of the 4th guy. Cameron Mitchell's there. He was a 5th-round draft pick. He might have the edge because he was drafted this year. And then Mike Ford, who they signed from Atlanta, is another really, really good special teams player. So I think because of that, it could hurt them trying to make the team. They're going to want those bottom of the roster guys to play special teams, and there's 2 aces right there that could steal spots.
The other thing that's going to be really interesting, this roster, the back half of it has been upgraded. There are going to be guys that don't make the 53 that get, and probably multiple guys who get cut on cutdown day, which is all at once, who probably get claimed and make another 53-man roster around the NFL.
Yeah, and I'd kind of alluded to that in the article that in the past we're used to seeing the Browns kind of scour the waiving wires for, hey, how can we fill out the bottom of our roster? But Andrew Berry's done a good enough job that I think they're going to be a team that now there's so much talent. They're going to be one of those teams that has to cut players that other teams are going to be kind of having an eye on this guy and say, hey, does he fit our roster a little bit better? Can he help us? So it's a good problem to have a good roster, but at the same time, you're going to see guys, that can play that might not make the team.
Randy Gurzi from Dog Pound Daily, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Randy.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Randy Gurzi, make sure you check him out. Always really interesting and good Browns coverage with Dog Pound Daily. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.